Hey, podcast listening people. Connor Doobie here. Happy Friday to you, my friends. It is October the 1st. Can you believe it? We're going into Q4 and we are continuing to bring you the heat, to bring you some great information, guests, podcasts, insights, strategies on the things you know, like, and love: B2B sales, marketing, business development. Today, I have a guest interview for you. I got my man, Collin Mitchell, you're a Forex founder, passionate about sales like me, entrepreneurship, podcasting, which we can nerd out about, and also the co-founder of Salescast and host of Sales Transformation, which I had the great honor of being a guest on recently. So, Collin, welcome to the show. Happy Friday to you. What's going on in your world?
Yeah, man. Connor, thanks for the intro. Thanks for having me on the show. I will try to bring as much fire as you brought to my episode that's coming out next week. So hopefully I can live up to that expectation.
Do you even got to try? It's just there. You got it right here in your heart.
Oh man, we'll see. Hopefully I can bring it today, but I think we got something planned special. This is a topic that I could talk about probably way longer than people are willing to listen. So you might have to just tell me to shut up.
I will facilitate things accordingly, but let's start with this. I read your bio and gave a little bit of brief background, but yeah. I'm going to challenge you here because this is actually difficult for most people. I'm going to give you permission to brag about yourself. Ooh. And, give everyone a bit of your successes and what led you to where you're at in your career and your life today.
Yeah. So we'll take it back. We'll take it back a little while here. So I was born pretty much dirt poor, raised by a single mom. My dad preferred to spend time in prison than with me, and we didn't have a lot of money, and it was a struggle to pay the bills. I was embarrassed at the grocery store, hoping that kids from school wouldn't see that we bought our groceries with food stamps. And that was my life. And, I saw and experienced a lot of things as a kid that most kids should never have to experience. But I wouldn't change any of it. And here's why: because it basically molded and shaped me into the person that I am today and gave me the grit and the hustle and the, perseverance to do what I've been able to accomplish. And so I didn't go to college. I barely made it through high school and got my first sales job and saw it as my way out. And so I gave it everything that I had. I was the first one into the office every day.
What was your first sales job?
Yeah. So I was selling aftermarket printing supplies, and the margins were fantastic. But the training was pretty formal and pretty intense. And I'm kidding when I say that. It was, here's the script, here's a list of names, and there's the phone. So I made a lot of calls. I built a lot of relationships. I learned some good things. I learned some bad habits in sales that I had to break later on. I worked my way up to the top there pretty fast. I thought that I deserved a manager role, thought that I was ready. They clearly disagreed with me, even though they said that I could have it. So I left and took a VP of sales position at the age of 25 at another company, learned more business acumen, learned more what it takes to manage a team, made a lot of mistakes that I learned from, and then started my first company with my wife doing very similar work. And we scaled that business to $5 million in 26 months.
Incredible. That is incredible. In people who have found themselves in those situations, you end up going like one of two ways, right? You stay in poverty and you let your bad situation determine what's going to happen in your life, or you rise and you work hard and you work your face off and you make success out of the challenges and roadblocks and hurdles that you've faced. So that's incredible. You mentioned bad sales habits.
Yeah.
What were these bad sales habits?
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to ask that. So, things like I didn't get a lot of training, right? So I was kind of left to my own to figure a lot of things out, which I was used to because that's, kind of how I navigated through life, even as a young kid, because raised by a single mom, my mom had to work, to keep food on the table. So I was left to my own to figure out a lot of things. But to answer the question there, right? So I would just start saying things that other people were saying on the sales floor, and some of them were good, some of them were not good. And I had one particular thing that I was saying, like, oh, all of our products were made in the USA and all this, and it was working. And the guy that was saying it was putting a lot of numbers on the board. And then, an old timer came around and he's like, hey, you really should stop saying that. And I'm like, why? It's working well. Look, have you seen the numbers? And he's like, yeah, but it's not true. I'm like, oh, okay.
You're
So
just making
like
shit up.
Yeah. And, the script was very, it was a product that we were selling, and the script was very, transactional. And it was like, warm people up, build some, fake phony rapport, throw out an offer. And if they didn't bite, then it was throw out another offer. If they didn't buy, then you'd change the subject, and then you throw out another offer. And then, I remember my manager would say, and if they don't order, you better get a commitment for a future order. And that was, that's what I was doing.
Who taught you to make good sales habits?
Oh yeah. So, a lot of it was, I didn't have any formal like coach or like manager or leader that, showed me the righteous path of being a true, servant driven, sales leader. But a lot of it was just consuming great people's content on social media, listening to podcasts, reading books, reading people's blogs, like all of this stuff that some of the greatest people in sales are giving away for free. And so I would just consume as much of that stuff that I could find and eat it up. And I started to understand, playing the long game. I started to understand.
You seeked information.
Yeah.
You went out and seeked out the information.
Yeah.
What was driving you to do that though? I mean, you could have just stayed as a scammy salesperson.
Yeah. I didn't feel good. Like doing some of those things, like saying whatever, you needed to say to get the deal, didn't feel good. And you can get so far with those type of tactics, like, but if you want to go to the next level, that stuff doesn't work. If you want to close bigger deals, the people at that level are smarter, and that stuff does not work.
So where'd the sales career, and you're how old now, by the way?
I am 33.
33. And you started your business when you're doing 5 million a year, and you started when? 24 months ago, you said? Or in 24 months?
No. So we started the first business in 2010, me and my wife. And our first office was our living room of our 1-bedroom apartment. And we scaled that, with hiring some salespeople, spending $0 on marketing to in 26 months to $5 million.
Wow.
And then from there, a lot of that industry was changing, and I was trying to find more of a recurring revenue model. And I started to, go into all these other services, and most of them failed. And I stumbled across, unified communications, because we had lots of problems with our own phone system. We had a techie guy in our building that gave us a solution that worked, and we started selling that to people and started another company out of that. And that was fun. And I still have that company today, and we have some great clients, and we've been very successful. And then I stumbled across podcasting. And it happened like this. There was a guy on LinkedIn, my co-founder, Chris, who was posting a lot of content on LinkedIn that I hadn't seen before, like being really honest and authentic, and just like sharing like all of him, like stuff that, people weren't really sharing a ton, or at least I didn't see a ton of it on LinkedIn at that time. And I reached out to him, and he invited me to go on his podcast in studio. Went on the podcast. We talked about work-life balance and some other things, and I had a great experience. And at the end of it, I said, I think I want to start a podcast. Can you help me? And he said, absolutely. And he made it really simple. I'm like, how do I do it? He's like, you interview whoever you want, and I'll take care of the rest. And I'm like, that works for me. However, I'm very busy. I think I can only do 1 or 2 a month. And he's like, sure, whatever you're comfortable with, And then a successful podcaster came along and said, no, you got to record 20 and release them daily. And then you'll get listed in the coveted.
Who was that? Who said that?
It's a guy named Rick Gerard, and he is a very successful podcast.
I was wondering if that was JLD. John Lee, because he kind of subscribes to that model too. It's like,
yeah,
the more
I'm sure he probably picked it up somewhere, and maybe that was a thing that worked at some time, and maybe it does work. I haven't seen it work. I did it. It didn't work for me. So I recorded 20. I released them daily. I never got listed in the new noteworthy section. However, it created a habit, and we created a process around that habit, and it created some consistency around having a podcast and releasing them on a high frequency. And I fell in love with it. And then something else interesting happened. I got asked on another podcast, and I went on this podcast, and it was the worst experience I ever had going on a podcast. And, I don't want to throw any names out there, but here's how the experience went. I went on the podcast. He told me it was like a 15-minute podcast. He gave me the questions in advance. I gave him my answers. He told me I should maybe answer the questions like this, which was a little bit different than how I answered the questions. But I'm like, hey, he's been podcasting longer than me. Maybe this dude knows what he's talking about. And so we did the podcast, and I think we finished in like 9 minutes or something. And then we stopped recording, and he tried to sell me some high ticket, $10,000 package for some crap that I was not even interested in. And it was the worst experience ever. And I was like, he clearly only asked me on the podcast because he had like 800 episodes because he wanted to sell me something. And I told Chris about this, and then we were kind of talking about it, and I'm like, it's actually a really good idea. It's just horrible execution.
So your podcast that you launched, is that the same podcast that you're doing
today?
I
had another
change.
Yeah, so I had a podcast for my unified communications company where I interviewed entrepreneurs and founders and had a lot of fun and made a lot of great relationships. And I started to realize that as much as it's great having the downloads and being able to get sponsor money and all of those things that people typically get into podcasting for, I started to realize that actually the most valuable asset is your guests, and really nailing the guest experience and really being targeted about who you ask on as a guest is a very easy way to sell more deals podcasting. So
walk us through that, Mr. Collin. How do we, and by the way, you guys want to go check out this guy's website, podsesh.com, and you're pretty much full service podcasting. Is that
anything to do with podcasting B2B? Is our world. We're really focused on helping people drive revenue through podcasting. And that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean having a show. That could mean going on shows on a regular basis. That could mean you have a show today and you haven't figured out how to make money, and we can help with that. So, and we offer free podcast strategy sessions to any of your listeners. If they go to podsesh.com, they can book a time there, and it's not a sales call. Like literally, we're going to let you pick my brain, give you all of our best ideas. And then if it makes sense to work together, great. If not, you will learn a ton. So, all right, there's lots of ways you can make money podcasting. The most common way, get a bunch of downloads, get sponsors. The problem is there's 2.6 million podcasts. Only 50% of those podcasts still release episodes today. And then here's another fact.
I think the stats are like most people end up with like 7 episodes, right?
Less than
like
10.
they get to less than 10, and then they stop.
I think it's 7 or 8. But it's less than 10, right? So if you make it to 7, you make it to 10, not a big difference there. But 50% are no longer releasing episodes. And then here's another interesting stat is the top 10% of podcasts have 90% of the total listenership. So the reason that's important is because a lot of people think, well, everybody's starting a podcast. Should I start a podcast? And the answer is yes, because what that tells us, that last stat that I just dropped, is that there's more demand than there is inventory of good quality shows that are still consistently releasing episodes. So that, and it's not that hard to get to the top 10%. If you're getting a few thousand downloads per month, you're in the top 10%. Now, the leap from 10 to 5 to 2 to 1 or below percentile is a lot steeper. But just to get into the top 10% is not as difficult as you think. So that's one path. But problem is, most people give up before they get there. And they think of podcasting as a marketing activity only. I like to think of it as a sales activity first.
Or try to launch podcasts. Like, I'm going to start a podcast and get a bunch of sponsors and make a ton of money and just, live like the top podcasters that I follow or listen to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of
hard
work.
and it takes time. I mean,
yeah,
shit, I've been at this for 4 years and I'm still learning new stuff every week.
Yeah, it's hard. So that's, hey, if you want that path, if you like a challenge, jump in, here's what I prefer is I like to look at podcasting as a sales activity, and you're still going to get all the benefits of marketing. But if you think sales first, then you can start to see some ROI. You could start to win more deals. You could start to build more relationships that'll keep you going, so that you don't give up when it gets tough and you're not seeing any, ROI on it, right? So what does that look like? Well, there is a couple ways you could do it, right? So first example, let's call it podcast prospecting, right? So who are your ideal clients? And you got to be really careful with this, because some people are like, I don't know, it kind of feels like a bait and switch. But if you do it right, then it's not going to be like the example that I experienced that I mentioned earlier, right? And what does doing it right look like? Well, it's all about the guest experience. And there's a lot that we can unpack, but here's some things to consider, right? If you're a podcaster and you haven't quite figured this out, or you're thinking about starting a podcast and you want to know how to nail the guest experience. Well, it starts with even just booking your podcast. I can't tell you how many onboarding forms are feel like too much work, or even just people will ask me on their show and then it's back and forth email, picking time. It's like, it's frustrating. I'm already upset and I haven't even gone on the show. Right? So make that easy. Like, have a nice page where it explains everything about the show, why you want them on the show. Have the questions be simple to fill out. Like, make booking to come on your show easy. Okay. Step one, not that hard to do. Step two, be a great host. That's a hard one. It's a hard one for a lot of people. And I actually sucked at first, and my wife told me I sucked, and then I got better. And so it means asking good questions, listening, pay attention, right? A lot of early podcasters are so caught up thinking about like structuring what they're going to talk about on the show, having set questions. The guest is talking, they're thinking about what they're going to ask next, and then they miss a great opportunity to go deeper on something or ask good questions, or they say some very subtle response that is clear evidence that they weren't even paying attention to what the person just said. You know what I'm talking about?
100%. I mean, dude, I've done so many episodes. My mom was the one, not my wife. My mom was like, you need to work on your interview skills there, bud. I listen to your podcast. I'm like, Mama, no. Well, I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
But feedback, dude, once you go public like that and start putting yourself out there, you're going to get criticism. Some of it you got to take with a grain of salt, and some of it's well worth listening into.
Yeah.
I don't want to deter too much, but I had this thought earlier that I want to dive into also. You work with your wife. I work with my dad, right? We work with family members. How do you make that successful? How do you make that? Most people can't pull that off, man. I know we're talking about podcasting, but real quick, how did you and your wife end up making a successful business together? Do you have some tips on that?
Yeah. It's a tough one, because it has way less to do with like the business and way more to do with like your relationship with that person. Right. So I am not a therapist. I'm not a relationship expert, but it can work. It doesn't work for some people because, it's too much time together. They don't respect each other's roles or whatever the case is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it could go wrong. It did work for us. Like my wife had her area of expertise that really balanced some of my weaknesses. So, I mean, the key is having a partner, whether it's your family member, your significant other, that you guys balance each other, right? And hopefully that's the case. And if it's not, then you're probably going to butt heads a lot.
Most people can't pull that off. So
yeah,
congrats to you. That's awesome.
I mean, she's the CEO of the household now. So we've got 3 kids and number 4 on the way. So her job's way harder than mine.
Yeah, you get to come talk with people all day and have fun living this life, right?
I know.
Well, dude, so in what scenario because podcasting is very popular, and a lot of people who listen into this, they may also have in the back of their mind, we're talking about some advanced stuff, but from the basics of it too, when should you not have a podcast? At what point should you not use a podcast to do more to do sales, to do business? Who should not be podcasting?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it simple. If you don't care about your personal brand, and if you don't like getting more sales, then podcasting is not for you.
Otherwise, it's for everybody.
Yeah, that's a big misconception. Like, I think so many people get caught up in like, I'm not this, or I'm not that, or I haven't achieved this, or I'm not this level of success, or I don't have this title, therefore I shouldn't have a podcast. And there's a lot that happens in being a podcast. Yes, you can drive more sales. Yes, you can invest in your personal brand. Yes, you'll never run out of stuff to post on social media. Those are all benefits of being a podcaster. But there's also so much professional and personal growth that happens. You become a better listener. You learn how to ask better questions. You're constantly flexing that curiosity muscle, which is going to serve you well in anything that you do. And then the biggest benefit that I love is people always say like, okay, if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur, like go understand your clients, learn how to be in their shoes, read the blogs that they read, hang out where they hang out, go to their communities, read the books, go to their events, do all these things to like know your customer, right? And what better way than to just have them on a show and ask any question you want. And not only can you build relationships with those people and learn through them, that knowledge is going to transfer over to all your other sales conversations, all your other discovery calls, all your other demos, all your other deals that you're working with now, fully really understanding your customer because you're talking to them on a regular basis, asking them any question you want.
It almost becomes a perfect self-development, business development, and marketing system feedback loop.
Yeah.
Using this whole process. Like I just kind of stumbled upon it over the years and started to get a sense of it, but it's there, right? After I started talking to other podcasters like you, it's like, okay, there's something here. There's obviously a repeatable process and system to doing more business with your podcast. And one of the approaches that you like, which I agree, is reaching out to potential customers and having them as guests. Is that kind of what your framework is for that?
That's one of them. Yes. And it doesn't have to be like the sleazy example, like I told you, where like right after this and we, stop recording, you're going to try to sell me some high ticket offer, right? Like
I was planning on it. And then you brought that shit. Now I'm nervous.
So it can be, it can be done right where it's not sleazy, right? So like, the biggest thing is add value to your guest and stay top of mind with them. And a lot of cases, most of them are going to be curious and like want to know more about what you do and how you can help. And you have such a strong rapport with them now that you would never be able to accomplish in any other setting. Not in a networking event, not in a discovery call, not in a LinkedIn DM chat, not in any other setting. People, things about me that I would have never shared in any other format, right? And there's now like a deeper connection. And so what you do with that matters, right? So ask for what you want when it's appropriate, but always try to think about like adding value and staying top of mind. I can't tell you how many shows I go on, and then once the episode goes live, I never hear from them, right? Which is a huge missed opportunity, or they never do anything to add value to my life. And there's a lot of easy ways you can do that. If you're a coach, you could offer some free group coaching. If you have a community, you can invite them in there. At the very least, you can send them a thank you note and engage with their social media content, like at the very bare minimum. Now, if you do all of those things, you're going to crush it. You're going to land more deals through podcasting.
So you're not suggesting invite a guest onto your podcast, build a relationship. I'm using air quotes because people misconceive or misperceive. I don't know, one of the two, what that actually means. And then after you wrap up a show or an interview, then you pitch them, what you may want to sell. You're saying build the relationship, give value, and then use your information to continue to nurture them build the relationship and get them to the point where they're coming to you when they're interested.
Yeah. I mean, people always say, well, when do I pitch? When they ask you to. And if you do all these things right, they're going to ask you more often than not.
And almost 9 out of 10 times people end up going like, what do you do, by the way? Like, what do you, I know is my favorite question is podcasting like your business or it's like, yeah, I'm making millions a month from doing this alone.
Dude,
but
a perfect example. Right before we hit record, I was like, tell me a little bit more about what you do, right? I already had you on my show, but I still didn't fully know what you guys do. And then before we hit record, I was asking you about what you do. And now I know what you do. So there's that level of awareness.
Yeah.
And then I've had a good experience with you on my show. I've had a good experience going on your show. If I need what you have, or you solve a problem that I need solved, who do you think is going to be top of mind for me as the best option for that? Or if one of my clients asks me for that, like, who do you think is going to come top of mind for me?
Well, right? My sneaky trick is you filled out the link, right, to schedule the interview. Now you're on my email list. So you're going to get our newsletter. You're going to get free content. You're going to get access to information I don't share publicly on social media. And a year from now, who knows, maybe we end up doing business together. So I think
maybe sooner. I don't know. Here's another example. I want to give you one more example. So, okay, that's your client, your ideal client, right? And this is not going to solve all your sales problems. These are high quality targets, right? There's a place for your high velocity activities where you're running, campaigns, cold email, cold calls, whatever you do to generate leads. This is like, hey, here's my dream 100 or 200. Here's my high value, high target accounts. Ask those people on your show, because those are typically longer sales process. Those are typically more relationship driven, sales to win those deals. So those are the people that I'm talking about. But here's another strategy to consider too, is, partners. If you have a good, solid partner program, what do your partners look like? And great example that I like to give is marketing agencies. Typically, marketing agencies don't do everything great. And if they say they do, they're probably full of it because they outsource most of it. Now, typically, a marketing agency might be an SEO expert, and another marketing agency might be a social media expert or a web design expert, right? Well, all of those agencies that I just listed there, they have the same type of clients. And referring business back to each other is a very common practice. So having a good sense of who your partners are and building relationships with them is a great strategy to sell more deals via podcasting.
100%. I could not agree with you more. And people look at others and be like, that's my competition, dude. I don't want to talk to them. When in reality, you hit the nail on the head. Nobody does everything perfect, and nor should we. I mean, we live in a world of unfiltered access to everything, and your clients want to hire an expert, not a generalist, not someone who's thinks they're great at everything. They know for sure. They come to you and this is what you absolutely crush it at. And if, that's not it, we have partners that we, have the value of working with us that we can source in for you. Partnerships are so undervalued. People do that wrong too, right? It's like, hey dude, send me some business. I'll send you some business. And then stuff never ends up happening. But I've found too, the podcast keeps people sticky and engaged with you, right? Top of mind, and a strong partnership platform. So for those, we have a lot of agencies in our business. What is your partner model that's worked for you?
Yeah. So for us, it's a little unique marketing agencies make good partners for us, right? Because their clients usually need a content engine, right? In a lot of cases, or are trying to invest in their personal brand. Like those are good partners for us. But the interesting thing is like our clients are great partners, because somebody who's a podcast host and then somebody comes on their show and has a good experience, like the example that I gave when I first went on the first podcast that I ever went on for the first time. Like I had such a good experience. My first question was, how do I start one of these things? And so for us, like our clients are great partners for us.
That's awesome. So dude, anything else that's like super super vital that we need to touch on in, again, something tangible, sales. At the end of the day, you got to get a return. We live in the instant gratification generation too, right? Like we're both millennials and we want it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And, is podcasting really that vehicle? Maybe, I don't know. Collin can probably fill you in on that, but anything else people can really do to look at this platform with a serious eye and decide this is something I can use to get more business?
Yeah. I mean, if I'll make it really, really simple. If building high quality relationships with people is of value to you, podcasting is a great vehicle to do it. And let's flip it totally upside down for 1 second. Maybe hosting a show seems a little overwhelming, right? I get that. That's a hard barrier to break down. Most people that I talk to that are thinking about starting a show have been considering it for 1 or 2+ years, like thinking about it, right? So start with guesting on shows. Guesting on shows can also sell more deals if you guest on the right shows and you have a great message, you know how to add value, and you have a solid call to action at the end of the show. At the end of this, you're going to ask me probably a question that 99.9% of podcasters ask, and I'm going to answer that in a very specific way. And the alternative to that is people say, after somebody has been on a show, they might say, yeah, check me out on LinkedIn. I post food pictures on Instagram. I talk about fantasy football on Twitter. And I have a company website and personal brand site. And oh yeah, I have a podcast. Now that might be a little extreme, but you get the idea there. Like they give them too many options to connect with them and people just do nothing. And so I like to end a podcast the same way every time with one simple, clear call to action. If people feel like they want to, find out more or learn more or engage with me in some way. Which is what's
the way to do it? You can't just leave us hanging like that.
Well, are we ending?
No, we can still chat. Well, how are you on time? That actually bad podcasting practices, guys. I didn't even tell. I'm like, we just rolled into it. But it's up to you. We can go for a few more minutes. I'm sure there's some more stuff we can break down.
If you want to find out the great call to action, you got to stay till the end.
Perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful. So what are the technical steps people, again, you hit the nail on the head once again, which you're just on it, bro. A lot of podcast people who want to launch a podcast, they've been thinking, like I see Vinny was just commenting on this, and I know he was in a mastermind group actually that we were at. Shout out Brandon T. Adams, and he was going for a long time considering launching a podcast. Finally launched his podcast. What are the lowest hanging fruit steps people can take to actually launching their show without breaking their budget?
Yeah. I think I put a post out like I don't know, a month ago where it was like, I can't remember that. Maybe it was like $58 budget, $58 budget to launch a podcast today. And it was very simple, right? So number one, you need to host your podcast. Okay. So you can go the free route and go with Anchor. Totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody loves free. Simple. It's easy to use. Okay. My preference is Simplecast. There's tons of hosting partners out there. We like Simplecast. It's the one that we use. We have almost 40 shows that we manage in Simplecast today, and we love it.
Do you like Spreaker? Not to cut you off too quick, but do you like Spreaker? Have you used Spreaker?
I have not looked at that one. I've looked at a lot of other ones. But the host is not that important. Like pick a host. Doesn't even matter. You can change it later if you hate it. Like just get started. Not everything has to be perfect today. It's better to be done than perfect. And perfect is a fantasy anyway. So pick a host. All right. Let's go with Anchor. Let's say you pick Anchor. You like free. Okay, great. Now you need your show artwork and you need an intro and you need an outro. Okay. So you need to also record on something. Now, if you're going to manage your podcast on your own and you're not going to outsource it and you don't have budget for that, I highly, highly, highly recommend the platform that we are actually using today, which is StreamYard. And the reason I like it is because you can do exactly what Connor did. When we got started, he played an intro to the podcast. When we finish, I don't know, but I think he's going to play an outro to the podcast, maybe.
But you're going to have to stick around till the end to find out.
Yes, you are. Now, the benefit there is if you're trying to manage this on your own, is it going to be the best quality podcast ever? No, it's going to be good enough though. And the benefit there is you're minimizing the editing time. And this is where most people get really frustrated and don't enjoy the activity. So with StreamYard, if you play your intro first and you play your outro after the conversation, you can pretty much be done. You have a video, which you can upload to YouTube if you didn't stream live. And you have an audio, which you can go post on your podcast host, which is Anchor. Okay. And so how do you get the intro? How do you get the outro? How do you get the artwork? Just go to Upwork or Fiverr, or you have a friend that's creative. Get those things created. Once they're created once, they're done and you never have to do them again. And you might spend, let's say you use Fiverr or Upwork, you might spend $50, okay, to have those things created. Maybe a little more, depending on how good it is or what the rates are. I'm not sure. But you still haven't spent a lot of money. StreamYard is like $30 a month, something like that.
I think I pay like 19 or
yeah,
something.
19. All right. All right. So let's say you spent 50 to get your intro, outro, and artwork created, and you got a free host, and you have StreamYard. So you're now spending $19 per month to have a podcast. That's it. Go get a free Calendly account, use that to book the show, and go target the right people and have some awesome conversations, build some awesome relationships, and sell more deals with podcasting. It's that simple.
And I've been doing this thing for 4 years myself, and all those tools are pretty much right at cost level of what we're doing now, even at this stage, right? Like and it's all worth it. Like Spreaker itself, you can hop in here and do lives. It doesn't have to be a podcast, but you can share content. Like if you interview a guest, do a recap of that conversation, come in here and share some of your thoughts. There's so much you can do with that content, and it just feeds all of your marketing channels. But Fiverr's great. So obviously there's you can invest time to get this done. You go the kind of more inexpensive route. What about Podsesh? What would be the reason to use a service like podsesh.com down here at the bottom? By the way, guys, not affiliated. Okay. Yeah. I just love
our company is Salescast, but Podsesh is just the easiest way if you're a podcast listener to get a free podcast strategy call. It's not
Salescast is the main business.
Yes.
But this was the link you gave me, right?
This is I think we're going to wrap it up here. So let's just go for it, right? So Podsesh is that killer CTA that I'm talking about. All right. So we gave the example of, so maybe starting a show seems too overwhelming for you. So go guest on shows that your customers listen to. Go there, provide a ton of value, and have a really simple call to action. Okay. And it sounds something like this. If you are looking to drive revenue through podcasting, whether that's starting a show, growing a show, or guesting on shows, come get your free Podsesh. Okay, it's a 45-minute strategy call. It's not an undercover sales call. You can go to podsesh.com to get a free podcast strategy call with myself, where I'm going to let you pick my brain and I'm going to answer all your questions and give you a revenue-generating podcast strategy that you can leave with.
Perfect. Having one key focus area to send people.
Yeah, make it enticing. Give them, if they're interested, they'll show up. If they found some value in anything that you said, they might take some action. But just don't overwhelm them with options, or don't say, connect with me on LinkedIn. That is not a call to action. That is not a CTA. Like gaining more followers or LinkedIn connections, not a great metric for success of spending your time and delivering a great message to an audience. Let them know what you do, how you can help them. And if they're interested, they'll come. Now, the key is to provide a ton of value. I'm a big believer in front loading extreme value. If you're the type of person in your business that likes to keep the, secret sauce or, the things behind the curtain,
which ain't that secret, by the way, guys. It's not that much of a secret.
Yeah, it's not. People are only going to buy from you if you've blown their mind with value these days. People are way too smart. The like, hey, you got to pay to for us to do this thing. Long gone. Does not work anymore. If you blow somebody's mind, you challenge their thinking, you give them a tremendous amount of value, you make them think about something they hadn't considered, or you clearly articulate that you can solve a problem that they have and what the value in solving that problem is, or what the repercussions are if they don't solve that problem, then that's how you're going to win more deals.
So podsesh.com, guys. But I will tell you, obviously Collin has a business, he has a service behind this, and you got to ask yourself, I'll do the pitch for you, because I understand as a business ourselves that does content for businesses, it's, you can either trade the time, which is great in the beginning to bootstrap, but what is the value of your time? Are there higher impact activities that you could be investing into? And so you can invest into systems and services like what Collin has on the podcast side to save the time and be able to get up to speed much, much quicker, which is incredibly invaluable, which you've given a lot for us today. This has been incredible, brother. You're welcome on our show anytime. And those of you watching, listening, make sure you share this out. If you're watching after the fact, feel free to drop a comment. Make sure you go subscribe, visit podsesh.com. Do you want to share? Do you typically share how people connect with you on LinkedIn, or you just funnel everything to Podsesh? Like when you have a guest ask you, hey, where can people connect with you? You just go straight Podsesh.
Podsesh.
That's such a good point. I need to start doing that. People are like, where can people find you on social media? I just need to be like Podsesh.
Yeah,
bro. Go to Podsesh.
And here's the thing. Podsesh.com is not some fancy funnel page. It's not a squeeze page. It's not a gated piece of content. It's literally going to redirect you to my calendar to get a free podcast strategy. That is it. It's that simple.
That's awesome.
So I dare you to go to podsesh.com.
I love it. Collin, stick around one quick second here while we wrap up. Guys, appreciate you so much. Again, thank you. I'm very grateful you listen into the show. I see ya. I hear ya. If you have any guest recommendations that you have, feel free to share them with me. I respond to all my DMs. Make sure you go subscribe to B2B Mentors on all your favorite podcast apps. Go to iTunes, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. Much love, make it great, and I'll see you on the other side.